Patreon.com/. Hello and welcome to Faster Horses. I'm Mark Sutcliffe at Marks_out of10 on Twitter if you want to find me there. And these are my co-hosts, Nick Tomlinson at NT Illustrators on Twitter. Hello, Nick.
Hello.
And Paul Wilshaw at Paul Wilshaw on Twitter. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Mark.
This is Series 3 of Faster Horses. If you haven't heard of Series 1 or 2, check out those on whichever platform you prefer. You can now also get extended versions of these same episodes early by signing up to our Faster Horses Patreon, as well as one extra Patreon exclusive episode a month, along with other benefits detailed on the site. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really does help the show, and also follow our official Twitter page at Faster Horses UX for regular updates, interesting and useful articles and random musings from the team. Now, without further ado, let's get on with the show.
So what's today's topic?
Today, we are talking about design systems.
Sweet! What are design systems? Tell us.
I was going to ask you the same thing.
Oh, shall I answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go on.
A design system is a collection of designs that make a system. There you go. Job done. Job done.
We can finish this podcast sooner. Join us on Patreon later, where we'll get more of Paul's attempt to read the intro out.
Along with definitions from the dictionary.
No, a design system is it's generally a collection of all different parts of your designs that make up your product or service. So say, for example, you're doing a website, a design system would compose of comprise could be yeah. Ask me for dictionary definitions, not thesaurus. So a design system would comprise of things like buttons, input fields, your radio buttons, toggles, switches, headings, and then goes on to bigger things then, like cards or even screen layouts, page layouts. So you'd have templates of stuff. But what a design system should do, and what it takes away from, is designing a whole screen or set of screens from scratch, and then kind of like going on to the next thing and doing that whole thing again. And what I think I quite liken to design systems is Lego. So exactly the same as Lego. You can build almost anything with Lego.
Isn't there a startling statistic, like it takes 11 blocks to build something like 6 billion designs?
I think it's nine blocks, 6 million designs. I don't think it's billion. Could be billion.
Depends on your imagination.
Yeah. But in those combinations, you can get different things. So when sometimes you talk to people about design systems, they go, "Oh, well, you're taking out the creativity out of design." But that's not the case, because it's what you do with those building blocks that really counts. And I think, a key person to look at if you're brand new to design systems would be Brad Frost. I think we'll talk about this a bit later, rather than getting straight into the detail. But Brad Frost, his atomic design kind of set the precedent of what a design system should be and shouldn't.
I personally think that's the way we started, but things are going a bit further than that now. So you have to have more than just a catalogue of parts. You actually have to build out something that is more considered and more experiential, and talks about stuff like, of course, you've got other elements that don't really fit into neat little categories like that, such as your accessibility and such as usability and considerations like that. I think you can start with your components, and that's the best way to start on an atomic level, but it very quickly becomes more than the sum of its parts, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a good consideration for any design system is, once you do one thing well, then you can repeat that and reuse it, and you're not redoing testing on a button, testing on a layout or a card, to see if that's fits out all those things, and getting some feedback on that, then iterating on that design and iterating that design once, that then should change everywhere. Which is easier to say than done, I know from experience. But that's the general concept and general kind of like musings of what a design system is.
Yeah. So, what about all that then?
What about all that?
How does one set about making a design system? Where do you begin?
Well, what I usually say, if you're making a design system, if you use something more than twice, that's your design system right there.
That's your way of identifying that you've got a Lego brick, as it were.
Definitely. And I think, some people go straight into making a design system, which I think could be quite good, but what you're not doing there is considering the whole, and you're just considering a single part. So you might be designing that one little brick very, very well, but then you're not thinking like, oh God, I've done square studs and the rest of my build is all round studs. How do I fit the thing together? So sometimes I think, well, more than often, you have to go and look at a page, design a bit of the software first, and then break that down into those reusable components, because really you've got to test to see if things work together well before you even kind of get into designing buttons, because you don't know, can those things fit together? And that's why I say you've got to do things more than twice, and then it becomes into the design system. I think we had a term, didn't we? Snowflakes.
Oh yeah.
So
outlying items that may become components or may not, but we still need to establish if they'll be used again. We still need to establish how they fit into the overall user experience and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the same with snowflake. Every single snowflake in the world, which is crazy, is unique, which is mind blowing. But when they land onto the ground, do they stick and make snow, or do they evaporate and totally disappear? And sometimes I think, unless you've got that bigger page and that bigger part of the design system to test things out with, you can't really tell, and you can't really describe what those things are.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea, because whenever I go into things now, I admit I probably think a bit too much about trying to build a system with nothing for that system to actually reflect.
Yeah.
So listing, you can list for days. Oh, I'll need this button, and I'll need this button, and I'll need this button. But unless you've got a body of research and an actual product to design, then how do you know there's going to be any synergy in what not even that. Before you even get there, how do you know there's going to be an actual demand for the component you're creating, or the type of solution you're trying to put together?
Definitely. And I think sometimes, we get, so people mention the buzzword design system, and we get so engrossed in making a design system, we kind of like just think 300 steps ahead and make every single icon and every single variation of that before you've actually built anything. I think, that is, something I've fallen into in the past. And it's a really tricky one to kind of go, oh yeah, I definitely know I'm going to need that, compared with, actual demand. And it's that, and I think with developers as well, they do the same thing. Sometimes they write code thinking like, oh, we want this to do something in the future, when there's no actual demand for it right now. And I think that comes down part to experience and part to good product ownership, and part kind of what knowing what that demand is. And if you know that demand's coming up, then, go for it, explore it, put it in the design system. But if you're not sure you're ever going to use it, then, maybe it isn't worth putting into the design system right at the minute, and let it be its own little snowflake. And then
I think that's very important, actually.
Yeah.
The ability to not over-engineer or to I kind of resent putting it this way, but not to over-plan for the future, as it were.
Yeah.
Because we don't really know how things are going to change. And I think you've got to be cautious not to paint yourself into a corner by trying to build a solution that when you take it to testing, people don't want, but you've used all your bandwidth, all your resources on creating this beautiful design system.
Yep.
So you just can end up forcing it down people's throats.
Definitely. And I think sometimes we, that goes against other things as well, and then it does become too rigid. And then you've got to design a page. You think, oh no, this isn't going to work, but I've got this design system. It's been developed, it's been laid out. I've got to go with that now. I've got to really do those things. And yet the business has changed its mind and changed its direction. And you've got a brand new product owner that wants to do things totally different.
The beauty of creating a design system properly, though, is that if that does happen, you can go back to the initial component and change it there.
Yeah.
And it cascades out and corrects it everywhere, which is one of my favourite things about designing with a component library, especially coming from somewhere like Photoshop to Illustrator, and then even into Sketch actually does it, doesn't it? Does that exact same thing. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest benefits for me.
Yeah, I think and definitely is, and it's that. I was trying to do design systems without realising it about 10 years ago, and I was using InDesign at the time to do the page layouts, which would then link to the actual Photoshop instances, and then if you change the Photoshop instances, it'd change on the InDesign. And I was doing that, and that always confused me why other people didn't do that, because you should do one thing and not do it 3,000 times. You remember those massive flows you had, and then you'd have to change every single screen in that flow just because. And that's painful, isn't it? And that's what I think design systems should try and solve.
It's consolidating down that. Oh
yeah, Nick.
Sorry, go on, Nick.
Go on, Nick.
No, go on. You're okay.
Oh.
I spoke over you. I didn't hear what you said.
I can't remember. Just carry on. Go on. I'm sure if you got a point, let's have it.
I can't remember my point now. I was going to say, you're just consolidating down all that work, aren't you? And it's almost automating.
Yeah.
It's also it's almost automating it.
Yeah, it is. And if you're building if you're building it properly, like that's all accounted for from like the first instance, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think as well with design systems, there's a lot more to do now on design. Before it was, you'd design a desktop site, or heaven forbid a flash site. And you can tell it's the summer holidays and the kids are off.
Yep. I'm just thinking
that. Yeah, I got a 6-year-old walking around in their pants.
Look, it's very warm. We all wish we could be that 6-year-old.
Well, I'd say pants are optional, but hey, it depends.
Not when you live across from other apartments.
Oh yeah, the ripped guy with the watermelon.
Oh yes, that man with the watermelon. don't remember him having a watermelon.
That was just what
Awesome.
came from Nick's imagination, I think.
Yeah. Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
I've got
Yeah, that poor
absolutely
man.
no recollection of this conversation.
Yeah, basically, he was fucking a watermelon.
Yeah. Please listen back to our previous episodes to enjoy this UX-focused talk.
Oh god, I could just imagine Nick's friend going like, "It started off well, but then I had no idea what went on as soon as he started talking about the watermelon."
Yeah, I zoned out when you started talking about design systems, but then when I heard fucking a watermelon,
I was straight back in there.
Yeah.
Got our first Patreon there.
Still don't know what UX stands for though.
Next,
Oh.
welcome to season 3.
Yeah.
Next week we'll be talking about the UX of watermelon fucking.
Put that in the tombola.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
God.
I meant put that suggestion in the tombola.
Yeah.
Not, you know.
Yeah.
It's
That'd be messy.
it's a business idea. You could rent out watermelons.
Oh,
with-
no, you couldn't, Paul. No, you couldn't.
and then freeze it and put it in your drink to cool down.
Yes. Suspicious, Tangy.
Oh god, sorry,
Oh.
mum. Sorry, mum. We
Yeah.
went off topic.
We did, didn't we? I'm going to ask a design system related question.
Oh, do it.
How do you make your design system unique? I guess that's a question I can... I'm just looking now. I
Ooh.
just punched design system into Google Images just because I was curious what would come up.
Yep.
And this is how I operate in these podcasts.
Nice.
And a lot of them look quite similar. And do you think that that's because... there's a reason for that? Is it style choice, or do you think there's some practical implications that come into making something individual but systematic as well?
I think there's several factors at play here. I think, kind of like if you think about some of the most successful design systems, they've probably had millions ploughed into them with a lot of research, a lot of feedback, and they've been mature for years and years. Whereas if you're a startup, you don't have the luxury of doing all that. You don't have the luxury of putting all those resources into it. So why not look at, material design, look at the Apple human interfaces? Because let's not forget, was it Nielsen Norman says, we expect the same user experience from the last great user experience we just had. So, if you're an iPhone user or an Android phone user, you want that same quality and that same experience, whether you're using a brand new startup that somebody's made in the basement, we're on a shoestring, as to, a multi-billion pound company. So, I think people's tolerance as well, I think I'm going to bring it back to people's attention spans. And I always go on people's attention spans. We have rubbish attention spans nowadays. I think it's on social media, it's less than 4 seconds. In real life, it's about 8 seconds, which is less than a memory of a goldfish. And like people like you, Mark, you're searching on Google Images rather than reading text. and then we
poking at my arrow keys to go through images to try and get some sort of idea of what a design system is.
But we look for that visual consistency. As humans, we look for the simplest solution. So I think that's why a lot of design systems are similar. And why not? If you're brand new to design systems, if you're looking at starting your own design system, why not look at a steel material design? Look at the Atlassian system. Look at the IBM system. Why not
I think
steal it, make it better, make it fit you?
The caveat with that is that, of course, steal it to a point, or let it inspire you to a point. But if you do that too much, then of course you're not innovating then, and you're kind of just being a bit too reactive. So I think it's a good starting point to see what's gone before and to use that as inspiration. But I think it's just as important to consider how within your product, how you could actually use your design system to innovate beyond the use of the product.
Yeah, and I'd always say that's a baseline for stuff as well. So don't copy. Use it as inspiration. And take it to the next step, take it to the next level. And I think sometimes that's always too easy, isn't it? And go like, oh, look at our neighbours and go like, oh, they're doing that, or look at kind of like how another website in your same sector, a competitor's doing stuff, and copy what they're doing. But if you're going to do that, then you're not going to innovate. You're not going to stand out. You're just going to become one of the crowd, one of the same. So it's finding that, and it is such a fine balance as well between what is, the bare minimum of kind of making it delightful compared to just being I was doing another talk before this, and someone came up with a brilliant analogy of rather than minimum viable product, we should call them BAPs, which is I know, and absolutely, which is barely acceptable product. And that's kind of like that's what we do a lot of the time, and then we think, we'll just use material design because we're using this, and let's just steal that, and it's barely acceptable. So that barely acceptable product, and I love it. I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal that term all the time now. Yeah. So yeah, get your BAPs out. Had to be done.
I'll stick to my watermelon, thank you.
Love it.
Do like
Love
it. Would you call that an analogy? Is that an analogy?
I think it's
an acronym.
Yeah, I was thinking, there must be a dictionary term for kind of like fruit assault.
Fruit assault.
Yeah. If anyone knows, ping us on Twitter at Faster Horses UX, not UK. Fucking hell, can we get that one as well?
Say, Faster Horses UK team are going to be smashing it because of this.
Yeah. So, if there is a term, we'd love to know. Nick, you've been very quiet on this.
Sorry, I'm just recovering from my COVID jab, and I feel like my brain's not working today. So I'm trying to interject as little as possible, but and just try to listen really. I love the idea of a BAP. I love the idea of cutting through the bullshit and saying what is meant rather than saying what sounds good. But I think that's a different subject altogether, isn't it?
Possibly.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But it's true. When we say minimum viable, how often do you actually go beyond that? At what point do you actually have time to go back and reiterate? Really?
Yeah, I know.
And if you're building something and you steal a bit of material design and you use a bit of what Atlassian's design system does, and you use that, and maybe Frankenstein it together, and ship that, at what point are you going to raise that standard? Because it becomes a process.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm an idealist, but I just almost feel like, what's the point? What are you making this for if everything you want to put out is just the thing you could put together in the quickest time?
I totally agree, and I think that's part of the factory mentality that we generally have with products, and I still don't think we've come away from that industrial revolution time where it was factory based. It was that 9 to 5. You get into a factory, you make you make your lovely shoes in your factory, ship it. You don't ask for them back. You don't ever want feedback. You don't ever want to iterate on that. You might make a new shoe that fits a different purpose, but at the same time, you're not going to kind of like recall that and go, oh, let's add a few bubbles onto that shoe. Let's add some sparkly glitter, and then we'll reship that back out. That just doesn't happen, does it? I think we have that, with digital products, we still have that physical mentality with them, that we ship them and then we ship a new feature and it's like a new box on a conveyor belt, and it's not like the conveyor belts in Yo Sushi that come round. It's a linear conveyor belt that goes out, and those boxes go out and you never really see them again. You may get some feedback on that that then informs a new product, but rarely do we ever go, let's really make that product perfect. And I say this as generalists. There are some things that do that really well, that get improved over time and get better. And, I think operating systems is one of them. Our design software is one of them as well. But they still kind of rely on new features to win new customers or can retain customers as well. So it's a really tricky one, isn't it? To have that fine balance between what is acceptable, what's stealable, what's, kind of what should that be done as well.
Yeah.
Also, go on. I also want to pick up on Brad Frost, because everybody preaches about Brad Frost's atomic design system.
Indeed.
And the way he set it out was very scientific, which is cool. So he's built it on kind of like based on the periodic table. So he starts off with the atoms, the smallest possible pieces of the design system. Then goes on to thingies.
Oh yes, my favourite part of the design system is
the thingies. Yeah.
Otherwise known as molecules.
That's the one.
Yes.
Oh God, yes. Molecules, and then organisms, and then those organisms then make up pages, which make up templates.
So I think this is interesting, this, because I was thumbing through, or at least Googling and punching through the images of Brad Frost's Atomic Design, and he goes to layouts and templates, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Instead of patterns,
Yeah.
which I find very interesting. And to kind of clarify what I mean by a pattern, I mean like a system of organisms, of components that kind of operate in a common way, such as a filter.
Yep.
You opening up a filter or a search functionality or something like that. But it's far more considers the experience a bit more, and it's a bit bigger than just the components themselves.
Yeah.
Because I think when Brad Frost was talking about breaking out the page, when you then go back to page layouts over patterns, then you're still thinking about it in very analog terms, as if you were using a book.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting kind of, he kind of deviates from his own way of thinking. What he says on page 1 isn't the same as what he says on page 16 or whatever.
Definitely. And I think there's he talks about as well, kind of like from print design and brand and style guides, and like how posters should be laid out, and how, more modern things, how you should put on typography on social media posts and things like that. When I think a lot of it is, whenever I've done a design system and you try and put atomic design principles into place, people read Brad Frost and they take it to the nth degree of kind of following that atomic design. So they have the atoms, molecules, organisms. But I always find that how do you define what an atom is without having... And the whole thing about a design system is it removes documentation, because you don't have to write reams and reams of pages to say this button should be used here and this button should be used here, because you have the patterns then, this is how we used it here, use it here or in a similar fashion. It does this and click on that.
I'd like to comment on that.
Go on.
So that is true, and that is the ideal situation. But one thing I've definitely found is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the entire design system has to be complete by that point. If it's something that's still growing and developing, it's really difficult to say this is how this button works and this is where it goes. Like, for example, I've been working on drawers and things recently, and there are I've identified different things that you can put into every drawer that makes it a lot more useful, but it's not part of the pattern at the moment in that component.
Yep.
And so anything I create with like this quote unquote improved layout or additional buttons and stuff then becomes inconsistent with how everyone else is doing it everywhere else. And you have to then either refer back, you have to like create some documentation for it, or refer back to the existing documentation to sort of realise that I can't put these additional things in based on those rules. And I feel like if we were just working from a component library that was 100% complete, you'd know ideally you'd know where you stand at all times when it comes to things, because if it's not in it, then you're not supposed to do it. Whereas because we're halfway through the process, everything's up for question all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's part to do with that snowflake approach we took. And I think what you're describing there, Nick, and when we're talking about drawers, we're talking not about where you put your pants and socks. We're talking about things that slide out of the screen, and those. The design system is all those. It's the visual look of it. It's the usability of it. It's those micro interactions. It's the animation, and what can and cannot do makes up the design system. And unless you've got those key components, those 5 key components, then you haven't really got a pattern or a design system. You've got a sketch, or you've got some user research, or you've got some fumblings in micro interactions, and I think you need to kind of have all those bases to get what a design system is. And that's part of the problem I have with how Brad Frost defines things, and it is that linear thing you get, but design system very rarely linear. You don't think I'm going to start off with all my atoms, get up to my molecules and organisms. I think more often than not you have to work backwards, and you have to work from how does this work on a page, then take it apart and then build your atoms and your molecules, or even do it the other way around, your organisms, your molecules, and then your atoms from that final, what you want your drawer to do, and work on it backwards. And that's, when Brad Frost talks about it, when he says atom design, it always seems like you have to start with the atoms.
I was just going to say, what does he suggest in his book? Is it start from the atoms and work outwards?
Well, generally, according to the diagrams, he said build up from atoms, and then your molecules and your organisms and things like that. But I don't think that should be the way. And also, I have a problem with the terminology as well, because you have to have documentation to decide what an atom is, what a molecule is, and what an organism is. Does
it not define itself in that it doesn't break down any further, though? So an atom is an icon because an icon isn't made up of anything smaller.
It is, but kind of what do you define? Is an atom a button with an icon in? Could that be an atom? But actually,
Well, no,
you could
because that'd be
that
text and a container and
and
an icon.
yeah, exactly. So, but and then how do you communicate that out to beyond the realms of UX? How do you,
Well, I
you
think
know,
that again. I think that communicates itself because an atom is a single. An atom is the smallest thing you can get in it. That's so it's implied by the term. An atom is not made up of other things.
yeah.
It's an individual thing.
But then how
It's
do you,
one. So
yeah, and I get,
an atom equals one. So it can't possibly be anything else other than one component.
but then you get like bending of the rules, and you get kind of like these fancy buttons that then are dumped into the atoms thing. And I always kind of think that's self-deprecating when people do that, because it makes it really hard to find something. So if you're looking for, if you're looking for a button, I'm not going to go into, do I find all the atoms to do? Is that the right text? Is that, is that used somewhere else? Is that the right icon? Is that the right container? All those things in itself, as we talked before, they could be made up into, millions of combinations. And I think sometimes that's where design systems can fall down, unless you've got that more rigid and everybody's on the same page so that they know exactly, which atoms make up the molecule, which which molecules make the organism, and things like that. And I think, yeah, sometimes that gets lost.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I'm looking at now. I was trying to remember, because if we're breaking something down into atoms as Nick, I forgot your name then, dear. If we're breaking things down as Bert suggests,
But
to atoms, then you described breaking down a button with an icon in it. You've got the icon, you've got the text, you've got the container. Does that mean then we have, and I can't remember if Brad Frost goes to break this down himself, we have a universal, almost like a periodic table of elements, including stuff like this type of container and this type of style, and then it's just a matter of adding those atoms together to create something new.
definitely.
Talking out of my
No, definitely. And that's where the joy of design systems is. But I think the clarification, the categorization of parts, when you talk about atoms and putting those atoms together, if you don't then provide instructions, say, let's go back to Lego. If you don't provide the instructions of kind of how to build a model using those atoms, then people can build whatever they want, and that probably isn't the goal you want of your design system, because brand guidelines, style guides, tone of voice, all things like that, then people can mix it up and make whatever they want, which is good to a point, but that doesn't create consistency and conformity within your brand, your website, your print material, your your social media. Just doesn't all work together. It then people go off and you get, and I see this all the time, you get your social media doesn't talk the same way as your website. The images are totally different, because the churn of social media is a lot higher than a website. But if you're going to do something on your website, surely it's got to link in with what you're doing on your social media. So there's that visual conformity of whatever you're doing. It's that visual storytelling that links everything together, from whether you're trying to recruit new members of the team, whether you're trying to sell new products, all has to talk the same way in the same language. And I think that's where, if design systems are too free and too atomic, then people will make nuclear bombs, or they'll make
dirty bombs.
Dirty bombs, yeah. Or they'll make a brand new melon or something.
That.
No,
Got the old
don't.
one.
Oh, please share it, Mark. I don't keep it all to yourself. so, but yeah, and I always, people, whenever they ask me about design system, I say, build it the way it works for you, for your team. And I'd like to call things as I like the Ronseal approach of, it does what it says on the tin. If you're going to have components in your design system that buttons, call them fucking buttons. Don't call them molecules / buttons / button with icon, and all things like that. Because how do you then, without reams of documentation, find anything? And kind of you're putting a bad user experience into your own design system.
User experience,
yeah. Why do that to yourself?
One thing you raised there, which is something that I wanted to make the point of as well, is how important the documentation side of things is. I'd say it's almost I would say is equally weighted. You've got, of course, your look and feel, your style. You've got, of course, the components themselves, and then you've got the documentation that hold it all together. But as you just pointed out there, it's very easy to end up with just rotting documents.
Yeah.
Documents that just they get out of date almost immediately.
Yep.
No one reads them. They're not remotely effective. What do you guys think the best way to to create documentation or to not need documentation? What approach to that side of things do you think we should take?
I think you've answered your own question here, Mark, by image searching on Google, and it's providing examples and how you'd use it, and I don't think that's huge documentation. If you've got more than 4 lines to document something, then what you've designed, what you've built, isn't fit for purpose. Because if you've got to describe it to even people in your company, then how do you expect somebody in the real world to use it? And I think that is key. So documentation to me is kind of more, we use this button in this place. Don't use it, don't use white text on a light background. Things like that. And then we get into more, compliance, accessibility, and it's the use of that it should be the documented part, and not if it's huge documentation, then it's done wrong.
An interesting thing about documentation that you just kind of made me think of there is that about 50% of our team is Ukrainian now.
Yep.
And that's not to say that because they're Ukrainian they can't speak or understand English, but it does raise the chance of miscommunication.
Exactly, yeah.
And how do you combat that if we're maintaining, if we're the ones responsible, or a few people on the team are responsible for maintaining the component library and the documentation?
Yep.
How do you make sure that people of different nations with a different first language can access it just as well as you, and contribute to it as well?
Think about those beautiful Lego documentation. I'm going to call it documentation to build a Lego model. Think about those. They don't rely on words. Well. IKEA, perfect. Yeah, and they are global instruction manuals. They don't need to translate. They might translate the intro page, or they might translate the title of the model. That is it. And that's good documentation. Documented, and like I go back to our attention span is rubbish. Nobody wants to come into a new role and read reams and reams of rules and regulations before they've even done one design. Let them build a model based on your instructions, or things you've put together, and let them find out how to build the next best model, using all those components, rather than kind of writing reams and reams of documentation. I think when companies say, we need to document this, then that comes from a place of not understanding documentation, of not understanding design, not understanding a design system, and it comes from a place of, if you're gonna do that, you're gonna end up writing documents more than you are gonna be innovating, and putting together new designs, iterating on old ones. You're just gonna be maintaining a bloody document library. And let's face it, we've already talked about the factory of shipping out the BAPs, and kind of those minimum viable products, and we don't bring them back, we don't ask for recalls, and just that's it, lives on.
Figma do a really nice job of introducing new features, and it is beyond just simply introducing a new component or something. But when they introduce a new feature, you can more often than not download like a file that you open up in Figma, and it just kind of takes you through very simply what this is and how it works in as few steps possible. And that would be a really nice thing to do, particularly for like components and things like that.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
think if you can have interactive elements, or even offload the need for stuff like that. So, I mean, there's probably plugins you could write to check for to make sure you've passed certain guidelines, that you're using the right colours or that you're using the right padding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think if you're able to essentially make it so you don't have to write anything down, and it still has a bit of vitality about it, you can change things however you like.
But I think though, talking about like padding and margins and things like that, and that should be built into those components and those patterns. So you shouldn't have to think about, is this 10 pixels, is this 8 pixels, is this 20? Should be kind of built into it. So then, exactly like Lego, when you snap the bricks together, they're going to fit perfectly. And, especially like with Figma's auto layout, the way I build, pages and templates now is all auto layout stuff. So it's all snaps together perfectly and all fits into, a screen that I know that's kind of how developers are going to build my screen as well. So there's less thinking for, when you're doing a handover, less thinking about all those things, less communication, mishaps along the way. So kind of it's thinking about building that in as well. And if you just put a button and expect everybody to know the rules, I remember working with, I'm not going to name names, a certain person, and they said, we've got all these unwritten rules in our guidelines, you've just got to remember them. And like, no, how would anybody know that? And if anybody new joined the team, if anybody got run over by a bus, do you expect the next person to come in, remember, learn loads of rules and regulations? We don't work as humans. We don't work like that. So why? I'm gone. I'm just watching. So we're in Fig Jam now. Please sponsor us, Figma. We keep promoting all your shit. We're in Figma now, and Nick is jostling a little stamp to say segue onto UX Tombola, which I love it. I know.
That was absolutely seamless.
And he's also sent a WhatsApp message saying, let's move on to UX Tombola now.
This is how the sausage gets made, everyone.
It is, yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's a great article.
What? How the sausage gets made?
Yeah, inside the sausage factory.
Are you
it's
vegan,
next
Paul?
door to the watermelon factory.
I'm not vegan, but I verge onto it, except for pizza, which
Cheese.
yeah,
Real cheese.
real cheese.
So
cheese is just
thought
begins
I'd
with a
find-
begins with a "sir" for a certain reason.
cheese.
Yeah,
Cheese.
it's shit and cheese mashed together. Cheese.
Oh, that sounds
So
delicious.
I
Oh.
I thought I'd try and find that article, which was inside the sausage factory. I just punched
Yes.
that into Google. The first thing that came up was BBC Two inside the factory, Series 4, sausages.
That's just based on your cookies and
Yeah,
your
apparently.
your previous browsing history.
I was going to say,
a
don't
documentary
type that on in
series.
your work computer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, too late now. Too late. What are they gonna do? Judge me?
Oh, we're going to send you some free melons.
Yeah. Greg Wallace explores a factory that produces over 500,000 sausages a day.
Wow.
Why? Why, Greg?
Wow.
Why?
I'll dig that out. I think it was on Medium inside the sausage factory. Let me. While you're doing that, Nick, fire up the Segway.
Yeah, to drive us to the tombola machine.
Now it's time for our recurring segment, UX Tombola. Every episode we wheel out the UX Tombola machine, which randomly selects a product, a thing, or a process for us to discuss the UX of, whether that's good or bad or perfect. Right, so I guess now then it's time for the UX Tombola theme tune.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
I keep on forgetting about this, and it's my favourite part of the podcast.
Is that a train?
Yeah.
Ooh, UX Tombola! Ooh, the fat controller! Ooh, it's UX Tombola! It's a little machine, it's not a train.
There we go. Perfect. I love it. Thank you, Nick.
Oh, God.
Absolutely insane. So, give it a spin. Who's going to give it a spin? Paul, give it a spin.
Oh, in a minute. Oh, let me. Oh, God, just let me dust off this. Here we go. Go in.
Today's Tombola subject is airports.
Gosh, what's remarkable to me is how I have managed to get to the airport on a number of occasions, like 3 hours early, and still had to be called to get onto the plane because I've just been, I don't know. One
That
time
sounds
I
like
was
a very
hungover in a
Mark Sutcliffe
KFC.
situation.
Yeah. And
Hungover?
yeah, and me. I know. Don't be ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
definitely not hungover now. So I wonder whether there should be something a bit more proactive. Like, we've all got mobile phones. Surely you can ring my phone or make at least a notification or
Send a
alarm or
text.
something.
Wait, why do you need to get to the airport 3 hours early? Why?
Because I need to go and buy an Anne Rice novel, don't I?
No, but I mean, like that is like a prerequisite of going on holiday or getting a plane.
Yeah,
is
I
they-
think
they
it's a
tell you to arrive.
misconception that. I think it's, yeah.
I think it's all down to people not putting liquids in small tubes and see-through bags that holds everything up. Oh God, there's so many things wrong with airports. So many things.
Enclosed little villages with their own fucking religions and...
They're absolutely bizarre.
Cynically, I think they ask you to go 3 hours early, so you've got no choice but to buy overpriced food and drink.
Yeah.
To purchase some, I use the term loosely, duty free, that generally isn't much cheaper than you could find on the interweb. And yeah, buying those dodgy Anne Rice novels, or get your 16th copy of Harry Potter with just a different cover. And I'm sure that's why they ask you to go there so early. It's just the process hasn't changed though, has it? It's still the same as the 60s and the 70s, and it's
That's
like
it. There's nothing. There's not been any consideration to streamline it. They've introduced new passport reader things, haven't they?
oh yeah,
They don't work.
That take It's like self scan checkouts that require 2 members of staff to operate.
Ooh,
You see,
I've got
anyone over the age of 35 trying to use one of those self-scanned passport things, and you might as well set up camp for the night because it's the most frustrating thing in the world to watch. Is someone trying to get through.
my conscious bias there always tries to pick the machine not with many older people in front of me. Because I know it's going to be a bloody ball ache. Sorry if that's you, but yeah, the passports in themselves, what a waste of paper. Can we not do it digitally?
Yeah,
An
I mean, the fact that
internalised
they
system.
are paper.
Yeah.
Although they stamp them for some reason, don't they? I don't know what that's for.
Yeah, I don't know. It was for. It did have a reason in the past, but I don't know what that reason is anymore now.
Wasn't it literally just to collect the stamps, so you could be like, I've been to Spain. back in the day when that was a thing that people would be impressed by.
Yeah. No shade to Spain, though.
Oh no, I'm not singling
Why
Spain
do
out.
they
I just
stamp?
mean, are you googling it?
Yeah, we're going to Google it.
Why do they stamp a baby's feet? What?
To show who's boss.
Oh, look at this. Why do they stamp on glass at a Jewish wedding?
Yeah.
Why do they stamp passport on a random page, which is a good... let's find out about that.
So here we go. It says... the random page thing.
Not Lahain.
What determines the page that gets the stamp on your passport? Quora. I don't know how you pronounce that. Quora, is it? There's a head of UX role going at there. I found out earlier.
Where? Quora?
Quora, yeah.
Is that thing where you ask a question and you've got to pay to get the answer?
No, I don't think you have to pay.
That would be amazing.
You just get random people answering, so the quality of questions varies wildly.
Yeah,
and
heavy
answers,
citation needed on all responses.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who would hang around on those websites and answer random questions doesn't deserve to be listened to in the first place.
No.
The top voted answer on here ends with, but it is always best to speak as little as possible to the officer.
Okie dokie.
I mean, that's just my rule for day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Well, I don't just like small chat with them. Kind of, what did you have?
I'm not an international terrorist. Definitely not got a briefcase full of
cheese.
Unpasteurized cheeses.
Cheeses and melons.
I just fucking snorted then. Great. Use. Border control officials often place stamps in passports as part of their immigration control or customs procedures. There you go. It's so many interlocking little systems, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
That no one's taking any kind of accountability for.
No. Well, that's the thing. So the airlines are completely separate to the airport, aren't they? The person who owns the airport and the process of getting you through it is nothing to do with the majority of the process. What am I saying? The airlines control very little of the actual process of getting you from the desk to the plane. That's controlled by, I'm assuming, official, passport control, which is probably an offshoot of the government in some way, right? And then logistics of the building owners and managers.
Yeah.
Just not speaking to each other, are they? Maybe that's our UX solution, is to get them all in a room and have a good old chat.
I think airports are ripe for digital transformation. They should check in. I mean, the security thing I get, but surely there's better ways to do security.
Definitely.
You talked about self-scanning checkouts, and passports are doing the same thing now. And I think AI and facial recognition, could solve some of this.
I think they have a bit of that now, don't they? On passport control.
They probably, they generally do everywhere. I was reading an article the other day that said facial recognition's everywhere. Tough shit if you've got an opposition to it.
Okay.
And if you think about it, CCTV cameras have been around for years and years, and that as a dumbed down view, somebody would have to go through all the footage and track somebody's a missing person's whereabouts. through all that. So using a bit of technology to improve that, hopefully helps for the good rather than the worse and the negative sides of things. But yeah, it's just like the stamping of passports. It's really archaic, isn't it? I went.
The other thing that happens to me at airports
Go
is
on.
that I always have to get undressed.
I knew this was going somewhere like this.
Yeah. I always get told by a airport official.
Oh,
just
okay,
some
okay,
random,
okay. Fair.
Excuse me, sir.
Okay.
Can you take off your clothes? Oh, I thought you'd never ask.
I thought this happened at the bar while we were waiting for the plane.
Yeah.
And just
Reading my Anne Rice novel and getting a bit too into it.
layer by layer.
But yeah, because because I wear 3-piece suits and I usually have cufflinks and wear my watch and stuff like this. I tend to wear braces. There's bits of metal. I use a lot of metal. But then again, there's zippers on my trousers and they don't ask me to remove them. But the amount of times I've been told, can you remove your jacket? Can you remove your hat? Fine. Those two, I'm okay with that. Can you remove your cravat? Can you remove your waistcoat? Can you remove your shoes? That's normal. That's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm stood there like undone. And then I have to, of course, they go, yeah, that's fine. You're not carrying a bomb. Have fun. I could have told them that.
Yeah.
Carrying a bomb in your fucking...
In my cravat,
in your cufflinks like James Bond.
Yeah. It's the chaos before and the chaos after that annoys me. So they don't really prepare you very well, or they write it on signs. And here we go. Why have lots and lots of writing, and going back to documentations on design systems, why have all that? Give us the bloody IKEA furniture assembly manual of what we can or can't. Beforehand, what we cannot do, and can we do that? And I'm always, do we have to, how many things can I fit in a clear plastic bag? Apparently, if you've got the biggest plastic bag in the world, you could probably put loads and loads of fluids on a plane. But if you've got a tiny plastic bag, then you can only fit a few, and it's
only fit
crazy.
A little bit of cocaine.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not looking for cocaine, Mark. That's my word for it.
All right, okay.
Is this from experience, Nick?
Yeah, not my own personal experience, but as an onlooker. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But it's that everybody goes in, not 100% sure of what they need to do, and then everybody comes out the other end frustrated or pissed off. Yeah, naked, or they have to rummage around and get their laptops back in the bags, get the belts back on, get the shoes back on. There's no space to do it for a start, and secondly, it's just fucking chaos.
The biggest problem about airports and the entire checking-in procedure is other people. It's the person in front of you at the metal detector who stood there taking his fucking waistcoat off and taking his belt and his shoes off, whereas you're there in your onesie like every fucking other same person who's come to the airport that day. You should be able to pay a premium to go down a side corridor with a gap of 5 minutes between, where you're going to be assured that there will be no other people fucking up the process, because I know exactly what I'm doing and what I'm expected to do.
Yeah.
I remember from last time that I went, but you've got people there who are fucking either pissed or borderline out of their minds.
That's the other thing, isn't it? The alcoholism at airports.
Yes.
Yeah.
That does not help one bit.
And they actively encourage it as well. I remember being on a flight to Phoenix in Arizona, and this was at the time where you could smoke on planes, but only in a certain section. this is just before they phased it out. To
Okay.
keep everybody's health.
That's good.
You can only smoke at the back because obviously if you're travelling forward, smoke only goes up.
Yeah, it only goes backwards, doesn't it? Yeah. Just crack a window and
Yeah, open up that door on the side just by the toilets. Let all the pressure out. And kind of, they brought drinks and drinks. Before you know it, on an 8-hour flight, you're pissed off your bloody head.
yeah.
With free drinks and God knows what, and yeah.
Did you
So
get pissed, Paul?
I did, yeah. Sorry.
Don't apologise. I would have done the same thing.
I was sitting next to an American guy who kept going to the air stewardess. Oh, well, I've two over here, and I didn't even know him.
That's very convivial of him.
I know. I think because he didn't want to drink alone, so he
Oh,
roped me into it, and I
Yeah.
just
Couldn't refuse.
my polite Britishness went.
Yeah.
"Oh, okay.
I'm teetotal, thanks, but
Yeah.
oh, go on then.
Make mine a double.
So yeah. But again, airports have not changed, not adapted to new security measures that don't allow you to kind of do that. You can pay, can you, to go the fast track? But I find the fast track is just
As slow.
just as slow, but it's for the more middle class and wealthier.
Yeah, well, people who pay to be
Passengers.
slow, basically.
Yeah,
That's what they'll see it as.
yeah.
You've just reminded me of. Right, this is honestly one of the. I'm getting mad just thinking about it.
I can tell.
When you sat at the gate, right, and they call, and everyone stands up and queues. The queue from the fucking gate all the way down the fucking hallway thing, like the air bridge. And I'm just sat there going, you can't leave until I get on this plane.
Yeah.
Why have you got up? You just what do you think you're doing? You've already got a seat allocated before you get on the plane. And if I sit here for 10 minutes after the last person gets on the plane, you've still got to wait for me. So why are you queuing? Just fucking wait.
I know. I don't get that. Why get everybody? And then you get people then at the front of the plane, just pissing around with the baggage and getting everything out and putting things in the luggage, taking the coat off, standing there in the middle. And you just ended up getting another queue behind that person. Why not just let on kind of like
Just
the
get
first...
sat down first, and
Yeah.
then get your fucking neck pillow out
Or-
like after everyone else has
or,
gone.
Yeah, or just, fill up the first, 5 rows at the back first. The first
Yeah.
5,
Yeah,
the
good.
5 rows after that, the 5
Well, that's
rows
it.
after that.
I'm pretty sure they do the front first, don't they?
Yeah,
They
and
should
like,
fill it from the back down rather than the front.
yeah, unless you've got
backwards.
both, then fill it up from the seats furthest away from the entrances first.
But if you've got a seat allocated to you, then you're stuck with that. So the airport should probably find a way of saying, right, that seat you're up.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
seat you're up.
yeah.
That seat, it's time
Well,
to get
literally
on the plane.
like the Argos ticketing system, where
Yeah.
you've just
Yeah.
got got
Exactly.
a number and it goes bing, and then you've got to get up and go. Obviously, the difficulty with that is if you're 156 and 155 is some fucking daft cunt who's not paying attention, and they end up calling their number like 15 times because they're sat playing on the Game Boy or whatever.
This is very true.
Yeah,
It's
but-
not a perfect solution.
It isn't, but at least it eliminates the whole kind of like herd mentality. And yeah, oh god, it does bug me. And then people what is it? We just have to get in a queue, and we have to be first in that queue.
It means nothing though. You're not first. That's the thing.
I know.
It's not like it's not like you're queuing for a PlayStation and they've got a set amount of PlayStations. You absolutely have to get yours that day.
Yeah.
Like you're all waiting for each other. It's not like if you're the first in the queue, you set off before everyone else.
You're gonna get there 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
You just see one passenger flying off by himself,
like some broken computer game. They just fly out of into the air. But yeah, I think earlier, Paul, what you said there, so I've been going on holiday pretty much every year since I was little until very recently when I became an adult and had to book my own holidays and therefore didn't book any holidays.
Oh, sorry.
But the entire process from when I was a little kid up until recently is exactly the same, apart from after 9/11 they started to introduce like testing. You had to put your stuff in little bottles and various tweaks to the security system. But that's exactly what they were. They were additions to the already old and broken system that they've tried to squeeze in, rather than just taking a look at the whole thing again and going, there's probably a better way we can do this better. We put a man on the moon 60, 70 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm still going to take my fucking shoes off when I go through the airport.
And that wraps up another episode. Thanks for listening. Don't forget you can sign up to our Patreon at patreon.com/fasterhorses for an exclusive extended version of this episode, as well as one bonus episode a month and other perks detailed on the site. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred streaming service and follow us on Twitter. Catch you in a couple of weeks for another episode of Faster Horses.